Okay, so good afternoon. I'm an Appian Level 2 certified consultant, and I'll be taking you through the Appian Trail demo. Talking about myself, I have 5+ years of IT experience and Appian Level 2 certification and Level 1 certification, and as well, I am a certified Scrum Master as well. I have 3+ years in Appian training experience, and I'm an expert in architecturing and developing enterprise-grade applications for banking sector, translations, health domain, industrial manufacturing, and the list continues on. Talking about today's agenda, so we'll be just covering the basics of BPN and Appian. So I'll be just introducing you theoretically in terms of what is BPM, what is Appian, how the projects are built on Appian, what all applications can be built on Appian, why companies are using Appian. So introduction to that part, along with the basic components that are used to build an app inside Appian, that can be interfaces, process modelers, expression rules, records, etc. Talking about the course curriculum, you can find it at the MindMagic's link, which will give you a detailed overview of the course. Talking about the training, so this technical training will revolve around hands-on experience of creating an app from scratch to the topmost, where the candidates would be learning about how to create process models inside Appian, how those process models can be utilized, what are the design considerations, what is the architectural view that you should take into consideration while building an Appian app, learning all the basics of database queries that are frequently used in Appian. Along with that, performance tuning and debugging will come in parallel, and the technical tips and tricks will make the life better for anyone who is learning Appian. She can easily dive into the details of Appian and create app flawlessly. Talking about the Appian training in the market, so Appian is the only recognized global leader, and it has been topping the charts of Gartner and Forrester reports for quite a bit of time. It has its intelligent business process automation system and dynamic case management capabilities, which are keeping it off the charts. This training will help you gain expertise in developing and deploying the business process application using Appian BPM. Along with that, the hands-on projects and real-world examples would make the life easier for understanding how the Appian app works. Talking about the certifications, there are 3 levels of certifications defined by Appian: level 1, level 2, and level 3. All these 3 levels are based on the expertise of an Appian developer. So speaking about level 1, it's just an essential understanding of application design in the Appian environment. It is focused on that certification. Talking about level 2, it is more advanced than level 1, and it focuses on the advanced knowledge of Appian concepts. It focuses on the more of an architectural deliverables that you can give using Appian, abide by the best practices. Level 3 is to evaluate that whether you are capable of becoming an Appian architect, where you need 12 months of Appian project leading experience along with level 2 clarification. So this is the kind of level wise certification Appian provides, level 3 being highest and level 1 being the beginner level certification. For more information, the link is provided where you can get more idea about how and when to clear these levels along with their prices as well. Talking about the completion of the course certifications, which would look like this. Then there's some topic, of course, which are contributes to the whole Appian applications, such as records, sites, reports, actions, web APIs, integrations. So these are just the basic components that comes up in any and every app that you build on Appian. The projects that we will demonstrate would be an employee onboarding system. Here, the application will be built from scratch, creating the groups, creating the security, creating the rules, etc. Towards combining all those components of Appian to make it a real life example and develop. So the training would involve demonstrating this whole system, how it is being built, and what all components, how they are interacting with each other. All that along with that abiding the best practices, all of that would be practically demonstrated using employee onboarding system. Talking about the lab setup, the only prerequisite that the user has or the candidate should have is having either a Appian trial environment access, which can be accessed easily via going to the Appian website and requesting a trial environment. Otherwise, they can have a partner access environment. Talking about system requirements, it's since everything comes online, thereby you just need a laptop and a high speed internet connection to be precise. Talking about additional course resources, I'll just make the screen full size. So talking about the additional course resources, I have given two links. One is app, and both are the official Appian documentation, where first link provides you the latest documentation or the latest features that are available in 21.1 release of Appian, where it is all drill downable and you can use the hyperlinks to drill down through the details. Along with that, I have kept another link, which is Appian latest release notes, the latest features that have been introduced into the latest version, that is 21.1 for Appian. Talking about the mock interviews, few of the basic questions I wrote over here, which is like, what is asynchronous process in Appian? What are the major best practices in the process models? What is the naming convention in Appian? The list can continue go on, but these are the three basic questions that any and every interviewer would be asking the candidate. How to answer at the end of the training, you would be getting a significant amount of idea about how to answer, but as of now, if I describe the answer in one line for all these three questions, talking about starting from question one, what is asynchronous process in Appian? So in asynchronous process, one activity sends the message to another, but it does not wait until it gets a response. What I mean by that is, if I take a real life example, then it would be like you are calling someone over phone, and the other person to inform something that either you should go direction A or you should go direction B or any other thing. I'm just taking a hypothetical example. Suppose a user A is calling user B to give certain instructions, but user B is just keep on continuing his work without taking the instruction. Instruction are coming, that's good, but user B will still continue to do work. That's what it is written, that one activity sends a message to another but does not wait until it gets a response back. But in terms of synchronous processes, user B would be waiting and will not be doing anything until user A commands something. So that's the kind of synchronous and asynchronous processes. We'll get into more details once we start learning of the process models and other things in Appian. Talking about the major best practices in process models, the major best practices is setting up the data management policy, setting up the alerts, setting up the viewer membership, setting up the swim lanes, taking into charge that we don't exceed 13 more than 30 nodes in process models. So all of these are best practices that has to be followed in Appian. Then naming convention in Appian can be of any type of camel casing. Either it can be lower camel casing or either it can be upper camel casing. Whatever camel casing it suits, you should follow it throughout the project. It's not like you are following certain lower camel casing for certain objects and upper camel casing for certain objects. It has to be consistent across the application. Wrote the today's agenda. So here we are going to have an introduction about what is BPM, what is Appian, then how the apps are created in Appian, what could be the architectural, and what is the like starting point where what is the starting point where the app starts building. What are the things that you should need to include in an app to make it work consistently and fluently? What is a designer overview? What are the interfaces, process modelers, expression rules, records, sites? So I'll be talking about all the introduction part related to Appian. So it will not be a deep down view of how things are working in action collaboratively, but I'll be explaining the introduction parts of each one of them, giving some screenshots. So moving ahead, I'll just slide through the documentation of Appian itself, where I'll be explaining each one of this part. So talking about applications in Appian, how they are created or what is the look and feel like. So in an Appian Designer, so Appian Designer is a view that is given to all the designers or developers of the Appian environment. So this view is strictly meant to be for Appian developers and not for business analysts or some business leaders, or this view is restricted and limited to the developers who are developing the applications. This designer view will give you the all the Appian apps that are residing in that environment. Now this view looks like this kind of screen, where this is a view inside of an application, where in the left panel you can see that there are certain object types. Now there are different object types existing in Appian, as I told, like interface, constants, data stores, data types, expression rules, process models, query rules, etc. So this is a left pin to filter out the different type of objects that can reside into an application. Now, talking about how to start an application, or what is the first step that you should do after starting an application. So suppose you created an application which is named as test application. So in that path test application, what is the first step that you're going to do to introduce how the Appian app should be built? So first thing you should do is to include the groups. Now the application itself must be having certain kind of security, so the groups would manage the security. In that groups you can add the Appian environment users, where and you can give the relevant accesses to the relevant applications on the basis of groups. So groups basically are used to define this security, and it is the first step that you should use in order to create an Appian app. You cannot create, or basically you should not, as per the Appian best practices, create other objects first and then you create groups for security, because whenever you are creating an object, Appian will by default ask for the security that you want to give, and you always give the security on the basis of groups. Hence groups is the first part or the first step of creating an application. So creating groups is relatively simple. You can simply go to new objects and create groups, but we will dive into that once we start the practical demonstration. This is just an introduction of how we are building an app, or just giving an idea what all things are there in an app and how to start it. Now talking about, let's say we take the first object that you want to create is creating a process model. So in terms of creating a process model, you can use it as an action, you can use it as a related action. So process model is like a backbone of the application. Whatever actions the user wants to perform, suppose let's say we are having an employee onboarding system. In that we are onboarding an employee, so we'll be capturing first name, last name, mobile number, email ID, let's say these four fields. So that is an action to capture certain amount of data of an employee. That action can be developed inside Appian using a process model along with certain other components. But process model is like, it's a backbone of Appian, and it, since it's a business process management tool and a dynamic case workflow tool, the process models are the key to this. Then as I told that you have to add security. So suppose I am creating an object process model, then I have to add security. How do I add it? I have created groups at the first step. I am giving the permissions. So there are different type of permissions that you can give, which we'll dive into detail later. But as of now, I am trying to explain that how certain groups can have certain permissions for certain actions that can be developed by using process models. So after defining the security, you can also define the security to an application, where you can simply click over here and go to application security and define the application security along with the groups. So as you can see over here, the groups, the same groups are again being used along with a certain role, which will give them certain amount of permissions to develop the security of that particular applications. Now talking about tempo. So tempo is a by default view given by Appian, where there are 5 things that are majorly listed: actions, reports, records, tasks, and news. So actions, so we basically created an action above over here using a process model, and that same action we can map onto tempo. So whenever user logs in, he or she can go to actions and see that this is my first action. Here he can click, and talking about our application, employee onboarding application, the action name can be onboard employee, and when you click on it, you can capture certain details and you can save it. So this is the basic kind of overview that I gave with regard to how a simple application of employee onboarding can be developed in a low code fashion, where you're using certain objects of Appian to collaborate and give you high class overview. Let's move further, where we will explore more about the designer space. So this is how the designer space looks like, where you are having 4 different views in a designer: application, objects, user, monitoring. Talking about the application, these are the different kind of applications that are already existing. So suppose R1 is employee onboarding system. So there will be an application which will be called employee onboarding system listed over here. So the different filters again are present on the left, but the right pane gives you the application along with its description, where you can take certain actions. So this is by default created by Appian. The user is the developer is not configuring this. This is the basic by default application list view on a designer, on an Appian designer looking like, where on clicking of this, these are the like 1 2 3 4, these are the 4 basic application actions that you can take. Like new application, to create a new application, suppose you want to create another application where you say that you want to create HRMS applications, and you can click on new application, type in the name and description, and done. That's how simple and easy as to create an application inside an Appian. And in that application you will be creating objects that will be collaborating to give you the view that you want. Then importing and exporting applications. So in an environment there can be multiple applications which you can import and we can export. Talking about publishing an application, so publishing an application allows the user to use the application in a sequential manner. Then you can obviously define security, since this is clicked over here, thereby this security tab is enabled for defining the security of this. And the last one, but not least, is the delete action, so you can delete the application from the system. So this is the basic overview of how the Appian Designer looks like. The latest overview contains this kind of a black theme along with all the things. The monitoring and the deployment thing are recently being introduced and enhanced in the latest versions of Appian, where you can automate the deployments from one application environment to another Appian application environment. So it was basically being introduced in the latest versions of Appian. In the previous one, you weren't having automated deployment capabilities. So Appian as a low-code platform, it is basically designed for to build business process management application and using low-code along with RPA as well. So Appian has recently introduced RPA functionality as well. So it is further making it an all-in-house low-code dev platform. We'll speak about the RPA and other things as well, but since it is an introduction part, I just want to give a gist as how the Appian is expanding. So latest addition to the Appian low-code IBPMS capability is RPA, robotic process automation, which is like Appian itself is making it an in-house capability to serve any and every business in the market. Talking about objects view, so currently I explained what is an application view. This is the first tab, application view, that I explained. Now talking about the objects view. Now objects view will give you as a designer an overview of all the objects that are residing in that environment. So along the filter again changed, the object type filter came, and over here you can filter out on the basis of what all objects do you want to see. The objects, as you can see, are being listed as different, with different color icons, with different names. And as you can see, the camel casing is also followed. So basically whenever you name an application, you name it along with the symbolically like URM or something else like example. So different objects, who created and what was created and when it was modified, all those details can be easily checked at the objects list that is listed over here. Further, you can filter it on the basis of users as well, or on the basis of start date and an end date. So this is a kind of object view that you get, which allows you to easily access objects that are residing on the Appian environment in a single view. Now talking about users view. So users view is again all the users that are there on the Appian environment. You can check it on the users view. Now this update user, so this is like a user profile that is getting created on Appian, where you define all the parameters of that profile, like first name, last name, what all security he or she can have. Either he or she can be a system admin, or either he or she can be a basic user. So difference between these two is very simple. System admin, he or she is having all the access of environment, he or she can take any command in the system. Basic user, it is a basic user, it does not have all the administrator rights, it is confined to certain limited actions to be done inside an environment. Talking about contact details, you can enter the details. So basically it's a user view, how it looks like in an Appian or for an Appian user. More details are written on these documentations, but I'm just explaining the introductory parts. Now talking about the fourth view, which is the monitoring view. So this monitoring view inside Appian gives you the monitoring of all the things that are happening in the environment. So if we talk about this particular image, There you can see what all process activities are going on along with these beautiful drill downable charts. This allows designer to basically troubleshoot or monitor what is happening inside system. Is system getting slow? Any performance issues are coming? Any debugging is needed? Anything and everything is being captured inside a 360-degree view, which is the monitoring view of Appian. This section A defines about the process models and process activities. The section B defines if there are any security warnings that certain objects are missing some security. There are some certain unreferenced objects. Then talking about Appian recommendations, then it's automatically suggests that these are the recommendations that you should follow inside the Appian environment to make it more enhanceable. So this is a kind of monitoring view again that you get with the Appian latest versions, where it is clubbing all the things into one and describing, talking about the fifth and the final view, which is the deployment view. So deployment view allows you to basically deploy applications from one environment to other using manual deployments or using automated deployments. So talking about manual deployment, you can see that over here it gives you the all the details who did what, and the other view of if it is completed or in progress, and the other left panel again for filtering out the things. So talking about building process models or basically process modeling inside Appian. So there are multiple smart services that are being used into process models. Now I'm just diving into the process model section in order to explain you how does the backbone of the case management system works and how it is easy and lower time consuming in terms of creating complex workflows into simpler building blocks. So talking about process models, they can be built in a drag and drop format where all the smart services are listed again on the left panel, which are expendable. So activities, events, gateways, all the things are listed over here. Then talking about the interfaces, so everything can be dragged and drop over here, and they can be connected via these workflow chains to complete the workflow. So suppose we are onboarding an employee, then a workflow would look like a start node where the process will start, a UIT or basically a user interface where user will be entering certain amount of details. Then after that user interface, we will not be using this interface. So what we'll be using is to save certain amount of data into the database. Whenever we are onboarding an employee, we are saving its data into database. So thereby after user has gone to user interface, filled out the details and clicked on submit, this write to data store entity, this is a smart service already built in Appian where you just configure it, which table to use, where it should save data, and it will store the data inside it. And the final end node, which determines that the process has been ended or the process is completed. So all of this activity again is captured into the monitoring view, which I explained just before. But just giving you an overview of how it is easy and low code to develop inside an Appian a simple action by just doing a drag and drop. Then the action that I was speaking about, this is a beautiful which represents what. So this update customer is an related action to this particular record. Now in our terms it may be update employee. So in that art update employee, so this action works on what, this is the backbone. So the, as I was talking about, that this is the backbone, the process models are itself combining all the components to create a particular action. So update customer is like, here it is starting, and then on starting it is doing certain amount of data manipulation and the other required things, and it is updating the data into a database and terminating the action. So basically the whole process model is summed up into a rated action of what is rated over here. So this is the picture that I use usually to demonstrate that how Appian actions or related actions are built on the process model side. So we'll just jump to the last topic of the presentation, which is the interface. Interface. So process model is again the backbone, and inside the process model you have capability to have interface designer as well. So I'll just jump to that. I'm just trying to find the link. Probably I've missed it somewhere over here. So inside Appian Designer, you are having the capability to design the interfaces for Appian user or Appian designer in a very simpler manner. So there are template based interfaces that you can create. So you can simply click on a template and it will be boom popping up over here like here. So the form is itself created and you just don't need to do anything. You just need to click, it will be popping up over here. So there are different type of templates that help designers to create the user interfaces faster and again at a low code speed. So there, if you see, then if you clicked over here, there's header, 2 buttons and a box, header, 2 buttons and a box. So this kind of templates you can easily choose to create the Appian interfaces. In the inside Appian interfaces, you have already pre-built certain fields like such as date field, decimal field, text field. So all of this is drag and drop things from the Appian Designer view. Then it is seen over here, the it is shown that from here the paragraph field is picked up and it is slided over here, and you can decide where you want to choose it or where you want to see it. So I'm just giving you an overview of how it is easy to, without code, build a form and integrate it inside a process model to build an action. So this is the low code capabilities that Appian provides. Then in this animation, as you can see, if you want to configure certain amount of fields as per you like, then you can do it using designer view. So there is no coding that is being used, or there is no actual code that you are writing. Appian is already doing it for you. You just need to specify what needs to be done. So in this particular example, it is like whenever you are hovering over different contents of the interface and choosing one, then the same is highlighted in the left overview of the form layout. So see, this is 1 2 3 and the pink layer is again highlighting over it. And the last component is choose, which is the paragraph field. You can add different kind of validations on the field. So those are again drill downable topics which we'll cover in the further demonstrations, but this is how easy it is to create interface. Having said that, I wrap up my demonstration of Appian, Appian training for this particular session. So basically what we learned inside this is what is Appian, basically what is a BPM, or how it is a low code platform working in a light and fast speed to create applications in a very low amount of time. So why Appian is basically preferred in the market, that it is getting low code and it is becoming an in-house project, in-house product. I'm sorry. So I also described what all things are there in an Appian, what are the basic components that are like the backbones of creating an application in Appian, what is a designer view, what are process models, what is an interface, how things are linking inside a process model to get an overview of an action. Thank you.